Surviving the night against 5 points of fright. Here's your look at the Super7 ReAction, It the Movie, Monster Pennywise. The nightmare fuel that is Pennywise in all his demonic glory. This 3.75-inch articulated It ReAction figure of Pennywise the monster reveals the nightmare within, featuring claw hands, sharp teeth, and the monstrous demon within. Even for his size, a pretty freaky looking Pennywise. Before we get a closer look though at the Super7 ReAction figure of Monster Pennywise, let's go ahead and grab the ruler just to see how tall the figure stands. It looks as if Pennywise is about 3 3/4 of an inch, or about 9.5 centimeters tall. Pulling the camera back just for a moment so we can actually have a look at the packaging that came with Pennywise inside of it. One thing I really do like about the Super7 ReAction figures is the retro look to the packaging. It's on the original cardboard backing that one would expect to find way back in the late 70s and early 80s of action figure releases. Of course, Pennywise is only inside this plastic prison, quite easily freed by cutting the little bottom on it with my knife. But on the back, though, is really where it gets its time to shine. One thing I do like about it, though, is while the card is completely flat and brand new, well, somewhat flat, somewhat brand new, I've just already opened it, I do like that they've actually printed creases on the back of it, so it looks like the cardboard, the packaging has been sitting somewhere in a video store for a while. And why I say video store is by the fact it says 7-day rental up at the top corner. It's a bit strange to have that included with a figure, but I appreciate the little attentions to detail and make this really do look like a retro packaging, to the point where they even have like a little peeled away horror sticker, something you would expect to see on a video cassette at a strip mall or strip plaza video store. And of course, you got a couple little images there's of Pennywise there off to the side. The Master of Horror unleashes everything you were ever afraid of. And of course, Super7 down below there. Really, really interesting looking packaging. I love, to the point where I almost would have wanted to pick up a second one of these, one of which to, of course, review and show you guys what it looks like out of the packaging, and then maybe one to keep sealed inside the packaging. Of course, along with that would be a higher price point. The figures already are sitting over $22. I have seen some places online that are selling the ReAction figures for around that $25 to $27 price point, but I actually found this at my local Toys R Us for $22.95. Now, that may already be a deal breaker for some that aren't necessarily already into the idea of 3 3/4-inch figures with the limited posability. But you know, though, one of the selling points of this line is the fact that they are looking like vintage figures that one would expect to have found in the 80s. And I think Pennywise does a pretty good job of that, even at the price point that they're asking for these figures. Picking up Pennywise now and getting a closer look at it. This is, of course, the monster Pennywise, so he's not as friendly and wielding around balloons that he can be giving off to little kids. No, by now he's revealed his true self, true face. Face certainly that has been scarred by acid off to the side. I really do like the bright colors that they went with here for Pennywise. One thing certainly can be said, even though these are figures small in stature and, yeah, limited when it comes to posability, they're really nicely painted. I really like the look of Pennywise quite a lot. The very bright, glowing yellow eyes, not to again mention the little vein work that they've got of the acid burn off to the side of his face. I really like the expression also that they've sculpted for his face, too. Everywhere that you see on this figure is covered with bright colored paint. And certainly, again, that's one of the things that Super7 are doing really well to this figure line, is brightly coloring and well painting these figures. I mean, the sculpting of just the hair alone, I think, is a nice price of admission. The frilled collar, of course, does limit a little bit of the posability that we'll talk more about in a second. When it comes to certainly just giving you a tease of that, rotating the head back and forth, you certainly do feel it, that there's a little bit of resistance moving the head back and forth. Now, maybe not all of it can be contributed to the collar, but you can see how this part of the hair certainly would be scuffing against the plastic of the collar piece. Again, we'll talk more about the articulation in a second. I like the face. I really like the bright colors that they've applied to the costume of the Tim Curry designed Pennywise based on the mini-series movie back in the 90s. A bright striped green of alternating both the colors of the purple and the green. You got little specks of paint there on his vest. Big, brightly red colored pom-poms down the front of his torso and very bright colored pants. This particular figure, by the way, does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. Not only does he not include a display stand, but he also doesn't include any accessories either. So if you did want to use like something to put into his monster hands, which I gotta say do look really fun on this particular figure. I think the figure probably could have, yes, come included with some sort of accessory, whether you still want to go to the default of Georgie's arm. Why not? We always fall back to Georgie's arm after all. Or they probably could have included, like, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say a bunch of balloons, but yeah, they could have done maybe a molded piece of several strands of string. And then, of course, the balloons on the top that Pennywise could have been carrying around. But by now, I think he's not the jovial clown that's handing around balloons. Right now, he's just wanting to claim some child's soul. Now, for the articulation on these figures, again, they're a little on the more limited side, being that the fact that they're more retro-inspired. So we've already kind of looked at the fact that the head only does rotate back and forth this way. You're not going to be getting yourselves a ball joint. No, sir. No how. So the head, yeah, doesn't move up and down this way. But yeah, it does rotate at least this way. And that's about it. The arms get a little more mileage going for them. You can rotate them all the way around. And the wrists don't swivel or anything like that. It's 5 points, right? So it's head, shoulders, and of course legs. Legs being the other thing that you can hinge back and forth. You can't move him back any bit beyond this point, simply just the way they've sculpted the back of his behind. But yeah, if you wanted to, you could have Pennywise sitting inside of a vehicle. Could you imagine if they came out with like a Pennywise mobile? How fun would that be? Horror icon vehicles that the characters could sit inside. Why not? Right? Back in the 80s, these figures would have had their own vehicles. I think that's certainly something that they could consider down the road. But while, yeah, it's a little small in stature, more limited certainly when it comes to the articulation, it really is a nice looking Pennywise. If you can get over the fact that the pricing on these figures is a little bit higher, and I still think I did pretty good by finding this at my local Toys R Us. The price point for these guys were $22, I want to say that's $22.95 to get myself Pennywise in hand, and I'm pretty happy. Yeah, the price point is a little higher, but I'm pretty happy with the outcome of getting this figure now in hand and finally on a shelf that I can display. And I would certainly be open to the idea of not only picking up maybe another Pennywise to keep him still sealed in packaging, but maybe going out and picking up some of the other ones that I saw in my local Toys R Us too. Now, Toys R Us seem to be some of the lower prices that I've seen for the ReAction figures. I've also checked online and seen most of the cases them sitting around that $25 to $27 price point. As you're getting closer to $30, it might be a little too high for the sizing of these figures, but if you can get them at local retail stores for around that $20 to $22 price point, I think if you're big into the ReAction figures, a limited articulation, sure, but I think you're actually getting a nice little representation of Pennywise that, again, can sit on your shelf in a small, small way. Having not really found Super 7 ReAction figures in the wild, I really wasn't even looking for them when I went into my Toys R Us. I was in the area anyways, and usually it is the case if you're in the area and a Toys R Us happens to be nearby, you're just going to tell the other person in the car, I'm just going to stop in, just see what's new in there. Are you going to buy something? No, I'm just going to stop in. Well, sure enough, I had my hands full already when I had gone down one of these aisles, and sure enough, somebody must have just stocked 4 feet of Super 7 ReAction figures. They also had other figures there as well, Power Rangers, and they had Universal Monsters. But the one that did catch my eye with the money that I had left available was the Pennywise, and picked it up immediately. Now, again, it's $22.95, so it's about $23. Slightly a higher price to expect to pay for a slightly smaller figure. But I think, if you're in the market and if you're not already collecting a bunch of other things like I tend to be doing on a regular basis, if you're kind of in the market of just collecting the retro style figures, Super 7's doing some really great stuff with this line. Smaller in, yes, size. Limited, yes, on articulation, but that goes with the territory of what you're getting with the ReAction figures in the first place. What I think goes to the credit of Pennywise is the beautiful bright colors that they went with here. All the paint that's applied to this figure is not messy at all. Everything is cleanly applied, and the figure, yes, has 5 points of articulation that kind of goes along with what you would expect to collect with the ReAction figures. I'm happy with the purchase. I mean, again, to find this at the price that I did, when especially seeing it online for about $5 more, I think if anything, again, if I was to go and buy more of these, I would probably try to track these down in local retail stores where I don't have to worry about, the additional shipping charges and everything else that would go along with that. I like the look of Pennywise. Could it, yes, have included accessories? Sure. I mean, figures can always come included with accessories, a Georgie arm, a bunch of balloons. Why not? They could have thrown that in there as well. But yeah, I think the packaging is really one of the best things about the figure. Not only just a cool looking Pennywise, but really fun, retro inspired packaging to go along with that as well. Have you guys been collecting any of the ReAction figures from Super 7? If you have, let me know down below which ones you have been collecting and what do you guys think of the line. Again, I know if you're not into this in the first place, then it's a hard pass. You're going to be looking at this and like, I'm not going to be buying these. But if you're in that market of collecting the retro style figures, Super 7 doing good stuff with the line. I'm really, really happy with the look of Pennywise here. Monster Pennywise. Hey, now, if you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure, first of all, you're hitting that subscribe button down below. Second of all, that you're turning on the bell notification. Third of all, making sure you're coming back to this channel. And also popping up at the very end of this review will be a playlist of other things I've looked at for Super 7. Not necessarily reaction stuff, but a bunch of other Super 7 stuff for you to give a gander to. Lots of other things coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.